Vikings in the Attic, In Search of Nordic America by Dregni, University of Minnesota Press, and In God We Trust by Dregni.
Norway, everyone said, well, Norwegians, they don't eat lutefisk anymore. They do, actually, mostly around Christmas time. But we eat 3 to 4 times as much lutefisk as they do. So it's much more popular here than it is over there.
Lutefisk swirl ice cream next door.
No way, really?
No, not really. Sign up saying they were out of it.
Too popular, right? So with that, the Jello, then there's the real Jello. Now, it's not a Scandinavian invention, but with many of the old recipes, it would often call for cornstarch or flour or something to kind of bind it all together, right? Like aspic, different things like that. Then when Jello was invented, the Scandinavians just glommed onto this, and so they would make Jello and everything. And I learned just yesterday that they made celery Jello too. And so you could put in cream cheese and Cool Whip and cottage cheese and grated carrots and corn, and people put in olives, and just anything goes in Jello. These are not old Scandinavian recipes. This is new inventions that are happening. Smør, so butter, right? So smørbrød, which are open-faced sandwiches, essentially means butter bread. Okay, so when we lived in Norway, we looked through some of what they call the bygdebooks, which are the ancestral books of who lived in certain areas, and they talked about the smørskatt, which means butter tax, because they would tax farms based on how much butter they could produce. So butter was like gold for them. And you probably heard back in Norway this last month that there's been a shortage in butter.
Yeah, I heard that.
For Norwegian, that's a huge deal back there. I mean, they have all this oil money, but they don't have butter. And Denmark, I heard that Denmark didn't want to sell them butter. They had this whole controversy between them, so they're going elsewhere, further afield. In Minnesota, we have the dairy princesses from each county come to the state fair. Clara Juland was a Norwegian, sort of a radical Norwegian woman who convinced all these other Scandinavian women to take it to the streets, even though they said, well, that's just very unladylike. But eventually they convinced the legislatures, which of course were made exclusively of men, to give them the right to vote. And we're not going to sell out to the system. So many of the Scandinavian language newspapers and magazines that they had would promote these ideas and say, how are we going to get along in this country? All right, so
Liberty Bay Books in Poulsbo, Washington.